since I've been on. Nate held it down last time. Appreciate that, Nate. And we got a ton of news to get into today. And uh, let's start with the trades. Terry
All right.
Rozier headed to the Heat for a first-round pick for Kyle Lowry. He's making his debut as we speak here tonight. And then he's going to face his former Celtics team tomorrow. So I talked about it a little bit on Celtics All Access. We'll get into it more on the Garden Report after the game. But this one's interesting to me because he's not a blockbuster piece. He's not going to change the Heat's fortunes overnight. But for a Miami team that so far has hung in there and played well, in fact, probably better than last year to this point, despite losing Gabe Vincent, despite losing Max Strus, this is a real piece coming in for them. A real starting caliber, two guard next to Jimmy Butler, a guy that can probably exceed and then some the production of Vincent and Lowry, maybe even combined here. Just tremendous numbers for him to start this year, 23 a game, 6.6 assists, a good rebounder. And he was a good defender back in Boston, not so much in Charlotte, but it's been a bad team there. So I love this upgrade, Nate. I just have a hard time imagining right now exactly how he's going to fit in here and how long it might take for him to get acclimated.
I mean, the Miami Heat are such an outlier in the NBA when you think about the value of a first round pick for them. So them sending Kyle Lowry and a first round pick, which basically means nothing to them, to Charlotte to get Terry Rozier, basically means they got Terry Rozier for nothing. And he's still a really good scorer. He can still play make a little bit. We have to see how the defense, how that comes along, but it's Heat culture. He has to play defense in order for him to see the floor. So I think that him being one of the more tough guy personalities in the NBA will fit really, really well into the Miami Heat culture. And for that reason, I think that when it comes playoff time, when we actually care about the Miami Heat, we're going to see how important this trade was, because now you have Jimmy Butler, who can score when he needs to. You have Tyler Hero, who can score when he needs to, and you have Terry Rozier, who can also score when he needs to. And all three of those players can now take the pressure off of each other to score as well. So that means that Jimmy Butler can now focus more on the little things, defending and things of that nature. You also still have Bam Adebayo, you have Jaime Jaquez. So overall, their starting five looks pretty solid. Also, when you add in the fact that they have probably, if not the best coach, a top 3 coach in the league in Eric Spoelstra, I think that come playoff time, the Miami Heat are going to be really scary.
They are, and from a Celtics perspective, they do scare me. I think after what we've seen the last 4 years between those teams, it's impossible to not be at least anxious about this team if you're lining up against them. If you're Boston, certainly lost to them last year, and if they're a better version of last year's team, which Jaime Jaquez has allowed them to be, Rozier potentially allows them to be as well here. The Celtics upgrades, maybe those move at the same level, and you're gonna see as we get into that game tomorrow the impact of Kristaps Porzingis, who is great against zone. Didn't put up amazing numbers against his team last year, but was really good against them in the first game they played on opening night. So he's a big difference in this matchup. Rozier, I'll be intrigued to see how they play around with him and the team as a whole defensively now, because he is a 6'1" guard. He is a guy that theoretically, Tatum, Brown, those types could attack. So the Heat have done well working around that in the past with Duncan Robinson and others. He's still been a big part of their attack this year. They can scheme around some weaker defenders here. And if he does add to their playmaking, certainly the second units, those will be very pretty, I think, when he's out there on the ball, just making stuff happen with Butler on the bench. It's a substantial upgrade. And as you said, Nate, they don't give up a ton here. I guess the only thing they might pass up on here is the ability to trade more for a bigger star down the line. But you know how I feel, Nate, for teams like them, for teams like the Knicks, go out and get a good player. You don't have to go out and get a star. You don't have to go out and unload all your future firsts to get the best player possible. Just get a guy who helps your team take a step in the right direction. And the Heat are still in a weird place where they're a little bit older, at least Butler is, so the window's not wide open into the future. But at the same time, you do, I think, want to just continue to take steps here and be a little patient, considering that you're building around some younger guys like Bam, like Hawkes, and others.
Yeah. The quick point I do want to make about Rozier being 6'1", Kyle Lowry, who they gave up, is also like around 6 feet too. So
Right.
I'm not sure
And
how
he
much
was
of a
just
difference
so
that really
bad.
makes. Yeah.
Yeah.
Additionally to that, I think that when you see how that roster is going to shape up, understanding that we've seen the Miami Heat get to two finals now in the past, what is it, 4 years, 5 years, with basically when at the start of the season, when you look at the roster, you probably don't really know who's on the roster besides the big names like Bam Adebayo, Jimmy Butler, et cetera, et cetera. But seeing that they're able to get to the finals twice with those types of rosters, I think that here could be another example of that. When you talk about them not giving up much, like I said before, like first round picks don't really mean anything to them. And another point that you made, that it's just they're just such an outlier from the standpoint of seeing them. It's just such a process, and it's so clear that they don't really activate during until the playoff time, until it's actually time to play basketball. So I think that it's going to be interesting to see how we see Rozier mesh with this unit, as you said. Seeing the chemistry between Rozier and Hero might be the most important part of that meshing. But overall, I think that this is a really good trade for them. I think that Terry Rozier is a type of guy that they need in that locker room, that they want in that locker room, that Heat culture is built for. So seeing that all together and seeing also how Eric Spoelstra will be able to maybe unlock some things from Terry Rozier that we haven't seen from him before.
Where would you rank them in the East right now?
I don't think that's a valid question until we get to the playoffs, honestly, because again, this is a team that every single year, somehow, some way, they always make noise in the playoffs. And until I see them play a playoff series, um, I really don't know what to make of them. Like I just said, past 5 years, when we look at these rosters up and down, we really don't really know who's on the team until they start having those moments in the playoffs. So right now, I don't really know if I can answer that question. But maybe around round one, I'd feel better about answering that.
Take your time. Fourth in the East, I have them right now. I do think this separates them from the middle tier teams like Indiana, like New York. I still think they're probably behind Milwaukee, Philly, Boston. But they do have that edge on Boston going back a couple years now. So it's obviously matchup dependent here. And that does bring us to one of those top three teams making a substantial change here, firing Adrian Griffin after the halfway point of the season and hiring Doc Rivers, which was so funny because the second the firing happens, Nate, I'm like, they must know someone they want. They're not just going to go with Joe Prunty here in the interim and try to figure out what they're doing from there. They have an idea of who they want here. But I did not expect Doc Rivers, who's been on ESPN, whose 76ers tenure did not end in a positive way. And you would have thought probably would want to take some time away from the game here, but it's obvious, and all the reporting points toward this just being too good of an opportunity. And James Harden got him fired, Nate,
All right.
and
So
potentially set him up for his second NBA title here.
if I'm Giannis Antetokounmpo, if I'm Damian Lillard, I'm asking out. No competent franchise should be paying three coaches. From my understanding, the reason why they hired Adrian Griffin in the first place was because they didn't expect to contend this season, which doesn't make any sense because you have Giannis Antetokounmpo, who's a top three player in the league. You're always contending,
Yeah, they're
and
expecting to contend.
you're trying to though for the past 2-3 years we've been hearing rumblings about the Milwaukee front office needing to prove to Giannis to get him to sign that dotted line to extend his contract, that they want to contend, that their sole focus is building a championship contending team, and then we hear that you hire a coach that doesn't match that line of vision. So that doesn't really make much sense to me. I think that overall I thought that we heard a lot of things coming out of that locker room about some players not being happy with how they were used or things of that nature. We've seen a lot of weird moments from that team as well over the course of this first half of the season. So all of that is weird, but I kind of chalked it up to just growing pains. Every time you see a new head coach in a new situation, there's always some type of growing pains that happens. So that's what I kind of chalked it up to. I didn't realize it was this bad. But seeing that it's this bad, I don't see how we can expect Milwaukee to be one of those contending teams if they're getting the head coach wrong. And additionally, now out of desperation, you have to hire Doc Rivers, a man who has blown the most 3-1 leads in NBA history, a man who has lost 5 straight game sevens, a man who the last time we saw him had his team look woefully unprepared in a game 7. And it's being reported by multiple sources, multiple people, multiple pundits, that if this doesn't work out for him, this is it for him as a coach. So it just seems like desperation leading to more desperation. And overall, I don't really see how Doc Rivers will really, besides being a veteran voice that players could respect, and even then, that's kind of iffy, because when you see how Tyrese Maxey is talking about his tenure last year with Doc Rivers benching him, and how he didn't like how Doc Rivers said that Tyrese volunteered to go to the bench when that wasn't true. Doc Rivers put him on the bench. When you see rumblings of Matisse Thybulle potentially vetoing a trade to Milwaukee because Doc Rivers is now the coach. When you see how good the Sixers look, how much more functional they look as a team, and how much better the adjustments are with Nick Nurse versus Doc Rivers. When you see all these things, I don't see how much Doc Rivers really helps them, besides the fact that Giannis and Damian Lillard now have a voice that they have to respect.
The hire didn't make a ton of sense from the start, and as you say there, maybe they the timing just doesn't make sense in any standpoint, because if I remember correctly, Giannis would have extended after they hired Griffin here, and all the reporting indicated that Giannis was a Griffin guy. He didn't want Nick Nurse, who obviously would have been the best hire out of all the names we're kicking around here. But Griffin was there. He tried to do a Nick Nurse style defense. They didn't like it. It didn't go well, and they changed it. So I think I'm actually looking at Giannis a little bit here, Nate, who I've been as big of a fan of as anyone. Making changes on the fly, demanding Lillard comes in, and I still like that move. I think Lillard's been sensational this year, on the offensive end at the very least. And I don't think, the people who say if they didn't trade Drew Holiday, they'd be in a better spot. I don't think that's true. Holiday had limitations as a second option that I think kind of held the team back last year. So you need both. You need to figure out who's going to fill that defensive play caller gap, and they haven't figured that out. They haven't built any identity on that side of the ball. And frankly, Nate, they've been a disaster on that side. And when you look up and see 141, 135 against the Pistons, which I pointed out to Dan on the call the night before this happened, that's shocking stuff. And I was surprised when this happened. I wasn't stunned, just because it didn't seem like Griffin had much of an identity as a coach. Perhaps he wasn't even allowed to, and this was just a player-run operation here all along. Obviously, you saw the video of Giannis drawing up a play, and obviously Giannis just has an outside voice in this whole situation. So it seems chaotic. It seems dysfunctional. But if Doc's better than Griffin, it's for the better. And I know Doc has his issues, and even after last year, I have to admit the playoff thing's real here. But I also think his strength is his ability to manage personalities. And right up until the very end in Philly, he did a good job with Embiid. He helped him reach another level. He did a good job with Harden adjusting to a new role. It just didn't end well. And that's going to be the question here. Is this going to end well? Do they have enough talent here to compete with the best teams in the East? Obviously, their first and second option do, but they lost a lot going from Grayson Allen to Malik Beasley. Chris Middleton is not the same guy. I mean, when I look at this team, Nate, they used to scare me so much just because of what Chris Middleton can do. And now he's played decent this year, but he's not the scary option or force on this team that he used to be.
When we start talking about teams that might need another piece, I think that we have all overlooked that the Bucks might need another piece. Maybe not offensively, but defensively.
So they're kicking around some names here at Yahoo, and I'll read these off to you and see what you
Mhm.
think of them. Caruso is
I like
obviously the
that.
top of their
That was the
choice.
first thing that I was thinking of, actually, because again, defensively, Caruso gets the job done for you.
I wonder if they can get it done, though. They don't have any first. They have 2 second-rounders they can use. That probably doesn't make the Bulls move off him, especially with the Bulls playing better recently.
Unless you
DeJounte
get a
Murray,
3-person trade. DeJounte Murray, that's interesting to me. I think you'd have to give up a lot to get him.
that's a
Um,
guy you probably can't get.
yeah, but he is really good defensively. I think that something in Atlanta. I don't know what it is with the Atlanta right now. Like I think they have the talent to at least solidify themselves in a playoff spot, not a play-in spot, a playoff spot.
They got
But
the
for some
coach now,
reason,
too.
it doesn't mesh well over there. So maybe Dejounte Murray in a change of scenery will help out Milwaukee or another team.
Matisse Thybulle,
He's not going.
he's not going to help.
He's no. I think he would help, but again, if the rumors are true about him not wanting to go to the Bucks because of Doc Rivers,
Oh,
it's
that's
it's
right.
not
I didn't even think about that.
it's not happening.
How about PJ Tucker?
I think PJ Tucker would help out.
And he did help out last time he was there quite a bit. The only problem with him right now is he doesn't do anything offensively. And you watch a lot more Clippers than I do, but
Yeah,
I hear he's not even taking shots
he
anymore.
doesn't really get playing time. Honestly,
Yeah.
they've gotten to a 9-man rotation, and they have some really talented players that aren't getting minutes. PJ Tucker being one of them, another one being Bones Highland. But we're talking about the Bucks, not the Clippers.
So that one might be the move for them. And they can't overturn this roster too much. They made their moves. Lillard and Holiday before that is where all their first-round picks went here. So they got to figure out with what they got. And I'm looking forward to Doc. As you know, Nate, I'm a big Doc fan. I think he's a statesman of the game. I love him being in the game and on a very relevant team here. So I'm wishing him the best. I'm wishing them the best. And they did smoke my Celtics last time around here. So they've got some momentum coming off of that, at least in the top tier of the East here. And, last thing on this, I know you're a big Sixers guy still. Should this concern the Sixers, who have sort of carved out that number 2 spot in the East, not record-wise, but I think just in terms of what we've seen from them? Does this worry them a little bit?
Honestly, I think from what we've seen from previous Sixers playoff runs, I think the thing that should scare them the most is Joel Embiid's health. I
Yeah.
think the thing that scares them the most is inside the building.
And he's in a tough spot now, right? Like, he has to play 65 games, and he's getting awfully close to that to win MVP. And the health is obviously the priority there, right? So he's in a tricky spot where he's got to play to win that MVP that I'm sure he wants, but he also has to maintain his health for the playoff run. And it's going to be tough to balance those two things. But
Yeah,
this
I
is a
mean,
weird. Go ahead.
also, the NBA, like I understand that he gets a lot of hate because he's a foul baiter or whatever, but the reason why he gets so many free throws is because you literally can't guard him. And I say that to say the man just scored 72 days ago, and the NBA is just better when Joel Embiid is playing basketball. It seems like that, at least to me, it seems like that's a hot take, but I don't think it really should be.
He doesn't seem as popular as he should be. And I don't know why that is. Maybe it is the flopping that he does all over the place, and some of the antics and uh, him crying after the Raptors shot. I don't know what it is, because I've liked him over the years. He's not a guy I dislike at all. He's been among my favorite stars in the league, even as a Celtics guy. So I'm looking forward to a Bucks Sixers series if it comes to that, and that will be a big benefit to the Celtics if they don't have to be involved in that round 2. So we'll see how it shakes out. We will see. Doc not officially announced today, but all reports pointing toward him as the next Bucks head coach here after Adrian Griffin's firing. I think a good move by them, even if it's not an ideal move. We're going to move on to some football. Of course, now is the best time, I think, of the football season to bet. You still got 4 teams left. You can still bet on Super Bowl championship odds for any of them. And then, of course, that big game is in a couple weeks. So head over to fanduel.com/Boston. First-time users are going to get $150 in bonus bets when you use the URL fanduel.com/Boston. Right now, Chiefs 3.5-point underdogs, Nate, to the Ravens, which I thought would be a little higher in Baltimore's favor. Maybe 4 or 5, and it could still go in that direction. But People liking the Chiefs after that win last week and what they were able to pull off against the Bills, obviously, here, at least more than I would have thought against a powerhouse Ravens team. And then Lions 7-point underdogs against the Niners, which I feel like is a little extreme too. I feel like that game's going to be closer than that. We're going to get into that in just a second right now. Championship odds are Niners plus 140. They're still the favorites to win it all, but just ahead of the Ravens, who are plus 170. The Chiefs are plus 450. That seems like the best value. And if you think the Lions are going to end their drought, plus 850. That is big number coming back to you there. So again, go to fanduel.com/Boston. Check out all these odds. They got the easy-to-use app that's super enjoyable to scroll through just to even see some information like this. And then, of course, all the live lines, same-game parlays, player props. The big game day is just as good as anything when it comes to betting. So check out fanduel.com, our official sports wagering partner, the Garden Report, Dome Theory, and the CLNS Media Network. And, of course, check out all the terms and conditions, 21 plus present in mass, online sports wagering. I don't have the thing in front of me as I normally do here, Nate, but $10 first deposit required. Bonus issued as non-withdrawable bonus bets expire within 7 days. Restrictions apply and see terms at sportsbook.fanduel.com. That's that. So let's get into these games. As I said, 3.5-point favorites, Chiefs, Ravens. Tremendous showing from Kansas City. Obviously, the Bills effed it up at the end. They almost effed it up with the fumble out of bounds. It was just a tremendous game. I can't see enough of these two teams here. And as I said, Nate, there were 22-ish bum teams in the league this year, maybe more. When we finally got down to the Bills, who were, legit in the end, they had their bumps and bruises this year. The Chiefs, who also had their issues this season, but still are headed by one of the best quarterbacks in the league. And then your Ravens and your Lions, who I always thought were legit this year and have shown to be a little bit of an easy path here, but they're in the mix now. And the 49ers, who have been the standard probably as a team all year. It's about to get good, and it already did last weekend. I thought the first round stunk. The second round was really exciting. I think 3 really good games there. And this is going to be another one here. Chiefs got that vaunted road win in Buffalo. Really tough conditions in that game. Mahomes played well. The Valdez-Scantling catch and connection there was something this team's really been waiting for all year long. Kelsey, I think, scored for the first time in forever.
Scored twice.
So what do you feel? I know you love both these teams. I know you're a big Lamar guy. What are you thinking here?
It's time for Lamar Jackson to complete the prophecy and go to the Super Bowl. This is probably going to be one of the best games of all time. When you think about, you have Lamar Jackson on one side, you have Patrick Mahomes on the other side. I think that this is the real Brady versus Manning, and maybe not even that, because I think that they're closer to equals than people really think. The way that Mahomes is able to throw the ball, the way that he's able to get himself open, get himself out of the pocket, manipulate the pocket. I personally think that the way that we've seen Lamar Jackson take his fast twitch moves that he usually used in the open field and take that into the pocket. I have never seen a quarterback manipulate the pocket like Lamar Jackson. And because of that, because of the time that he's able to buy his receivers, because of the fact that he's able to manipulate the pocket the way that he does, and also on top of that, because defenses have to be so disciplined and make sure that every gap is filled so that Lamar doesn't break open for a 80-yard run or something like that. I think that it puts immense pressure on the defense. I think that the Chiefs defense is one of the best in the league, but I don't think they've seen a test like Lamar Jackson. So I think that's going to be interesting. And then on the other side, all season, Travis Kelce has been the only reliable receiver that the Chiefs have had. We've seen Rashee Rice kind of step up recently. He's still a rookie though, so this is really going to be the biggest game of his career. And the thing that I'm looking at the most is Kyle Hamilton. Kyle Hamilton is one of the best defensive players in the league. He's one of the most versatile defensive players in the league as well. So seeing his impact on the game, seeing how much he's going to be dealing with Travis Kelce, if he's able to shut Travis Kelce down, that would be a huge momentum swing for Baltimore. So overall, I would have to say that I have Baltimore winning this game because they have the offense and the defense for sure. And the Chiefs, while we've seen it recently over the past 2 games, the Chiefs' offense is a little bit more wishy-washy. But that defense on the Chiefs side is also legit. So that's why I have the Baltimore Ravens winning this game. But I think
They
it's going to
should.
be really, really close, and I think it's going to be really, really fun to watch.
They should, and I agree with all of that. The thing is, if Pat gets this one, and I've been heavily leaning against the Brady Pat comparison so far because I just think he has so far to go, and he can knock off the Niners or whoever it is in that next game. Then you're talking 3 and however many years here. I think you're talking then. So he's capable of it. He pulled off a pretty big upset last week, I felt like, just based on how the team was playing and what the Bills looked like early in that game. So I do have Ravens. Chiefs have a chance, though, no doubt. Thoughts on this game? This one not as interesting to me, but as much better as the Niners are talent-wise here and how big the spread is on FanDuel, I feel like the Lions have a chance here. They control the run game so well. They're a very fun team. Their coach is nuts. I can't stand the crazy risk he takes, and he almost killed them in that first game.
Mhm.
But this is a winnable game for them, I feel like. Purdy in the rain last week did not look good. They ended up pulling out that game, but the Packers just gave them hell. And the Lions have an even better run game. I mean, Jones last week was just all over San Francisco.
Mhm.
I'm sure Gibbs and others are going to be for Detroit, and their line's so good. So this is going to be a close one, I think. I like Goff a little bit better than Purdy, just based on what I've seen lately. But it is outside the dome, so I'm just interested to see how it stacks up here. And of course, the Niners would give Baltimore a better game in the Super Bowl if it comes down to that. But I'd love to see Detroit get in there and just some hope for this obviously very distraught fan base and what they've gone through over the years. Seeing them do what they've done here in this playoffs and really this whole year has been amazing.
Yeah, I mean, hypothetically, if the Baltimore Ravens win on Sunday, they're the Super Bowl favorites. It doesn't matter who wins the other side. We saw them.
It'll be tight if it's San Fran.
No, we saw them curb stomp the Lions
Oh, that's
during the
right. They
regular
did play
season.
during the
We
year.
saw them curb stomp the 49ers during the regular season as well. So for those 2 reasons, I think it doesn't matter who comes out of the NFC. If the Ravens win, the Ravens are going to be heavy favorites. That being said, on the last podcast episode, I said I thought that the San Francisco 49ers would curb stomp the Packers, and boy, was I wrong about that. So because of how wrong I was about that, ultimately they still won, which is why they're playing on Sunday. But because of how wrong I was about that, I'm more iffy on the 49ers now. A part of me wants to just chalk that up to them being rusty because they did have the bye week. But a part of me also wants to chalk that up to maybe some of the cracks in Brock Purdy's Mr. Irrelevant armor are starting to show. So based off of that, I want to pick the 49ers. I think I am going to pick the 49ers, but will I be as surprised as I would have been 2 weeks ago if the Lions win? No, I won't. Because the Lions, like you said, they have that run game, and we saw the 49ers get the ball ran down their throats by the Packers. And as you said, Bobby, not the 49ers, the Lions have a better run offense than the Packers. So I'm interested to see how that plays out. I'm also interested to see if the Lions are able to get that run game going, if they're able to keep away from that offense and from George Kittle, Debo Samuel if he plays, Brandon Ayuk, Christian McCaffrey. Because if they're able to play from ahead and play keep away, I think they have a much better chance of winning. But also that comes down to responsible coaching, and that's the biggest if factor, especially when we're talking about Dan Campbell.
Yeah, and obviously some bumps and bruises on that San Fran side. If you had to pick any of the 4 teams remaining as your favorite to go all the way, who would it be?
Lamar Jackson, man. Baltimore Ravens, Triple Crown. It's Lamar. It's the fact that you have Lamar Jackson. You actually have receivers who can catch the ball now. You have a good running game. You have a good offensive line. You have Mark Andrews coming back, potentially on the other side, Marlon Humphrey coming back, and you have that triple ground defense leading the league in sacks, takeaways, and points allowed per game. So for that reason, I don't even think it's close. I think the heavy favorite is the Ravens, and it's up to Lamar to get the job done.
Yes, and if it's not them, it'll probably be Kansas City. because
Yeah.
Kansas City tops them here. So that's going to be the game to watch. I can't wait for these. Finally, we have the best teams left standing and some good football to watch because it was a brutal year. He's Nate Spurlin. I'm Bobby Manning. This has been Dome Theory. We'll be back again soon. We want to talk a little bit about 21 Savage, but we'll save it. That Nate's going to get into that more on the cap. That movie that seems like a movie isn't happening here, but the album, outstanding. We
Amazing.
both agree on that.
Chef's kiss.
And we'll be back soon with some other names and faces here. Thanks for joining us. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts. And again, check out FanDuel ahead of the football games this weekend, fanduel.com/Boston. I'm Bobby Manning.